Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's installment of the Holy Cross Institute webinar series. Of course, the year we're celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Brothers of St. Joseph. We appreciate you joining us this evening, and we're going to give it a few minutes before we start, but let's have a little fun while we do. We'd love to know who's out there and where you're from. So if you feel like dropping your name and location into our chat box, just love to see who's with us tonight. And I say tonight, wherever you are in the world, it's evening on the East Coast and getting to be evening in the Midwest. And sister, we know it's evening where you are in Brazil. Look at this, Christina Borden is with us. Christina is an employee at St. Edward's and she's from Brazil. Brother John Page from San Antonio, fantastic. Thanks for being with us. I love it. It's one of my favorite parts, seeing everybody roll in here. Brother James Spooner, thank you. Coming to us from Archbishop Hoban in Ohio. Nicole McGee from Austin, Texas. Nicole's an educational doctoral student in the EDD program at St. Ed's and is one of our lead facilitators on the strategic plan for the Holy Cross Institute. So thank you, Nicole. Look at this, Sister Mary and AJ from Corpus Christi and Brother Larry in Austin. Judy Feen from St. Mary's College. She says, hi, Sister Diane. Sister Elaine Poitras is coming to us, Sister of the Holy Cross from New Hampshire. Oh, this is fantastic. We've got sisters from Edwardsburg, Michigan, and more from Notre Dame and St. Mary's. Oh, this is fantastic. We've got, it looks like the Marionite sisters are having a watch party. They're together. So Kathleen and Joel, thank you for being there together. And Sister Mary Tiernan is with us. Oh, this is fantastic. Father Joe Moyer says, hello, Sister Diane. I visited your school a couple of years ago. So you remember Father Joe Moyer. Ed O'Connell from Connecticut. This is fantastic. Got East Coast, West Coast. Oh, we've got somebody from Oregon. Thank you for joining us, Bob. California, I see Sal Chavez. He says, hi, sister, it's good to see you. Utah, we've got some of our Holy Cross sisters in Utah that are with us. Ralph Elwert from Illinois, fantastic. Look at this, we've got a doctoral student at the University of Holy Cross, Tanika Gash, who's with us, thank you. Sister Helene from St. Mary's. Robert Vanderweg from Bishop McNamara. Look at this, we've got folks from LA and it's just rolling in here. I love it, I love it. So thank you all very much for being on. I'm gonna stop there though, and we're gonna go ahead and get started with our program. And again, I welcome all of you to this month's edition of the Holy Cross Institute webinar series, one that we started in August of 2020 in celebration of the 200th anniversary of the Brothers of St. Joseph. So we can go to the next slide there. So as you know, we've been celebrating throughout the year the recognition that the Brothers of St. Joseph, who then became the Brothers of Holy Cross, and the early foundations from Father Jacques Dujarier and those early brothers, Brother Andre Matai and others, and how this family of Holy Cross has just continued to grow around the world. Today, Holy Cross is represented through the Congregation of Holy Cross with the priests and brothers, and then with the three sisters branches of Holy Cross, we're represented in 21 countries around the world. In addition to the 120 schools that teach upwards of 110,000 students each year, we also have parish ministries and social services around the world. Just remarkable to see the growth that Holy Cross has experienced in this 200-year period of time, and more importantly, the impact that is being made, the difference that's being made around the world. I'm honored to be presenting this webinar to you tonight and really super delighted to have Sister Diane Cundiff with us, who is in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and she'll share a little bit more about where she is and what she's been doing there for the last few years. But again, want to thank you for attending and for participating in these webinars. And I just want to thank a few people because these don't happen by accident. We've got a really great team at the Holy Cross Institute and at St. Edward's University that helps to put these on. And so I really want to thank them for their support and their assistance. And they include Joe DiMedeiros, who's the VP for University Advancement, Denise Rocha and Sarah Dickens and Karen Dix, who are from the University Advancement Office, Kelber Gantz from the Events and Conference Center office, and then our team in the Holy Cross Institute office of Laura Sanders and AJ Valverde. So I really want to thank them for a moment. And I also want to just draw some recognition and thank the Board of Governors for the Holy Cross Institute, many of whom are on tonight's webinar, and in a particular way, thank our provost, Dr. Andrew Prawl, and especially St. Edward's University President, Dr. George Martin, whose vision it was to create the Holy Cross Institute in 2004. And I think as many of you know, Dr. Martin will be retiring at the end of this year. And we're delighted to be welcoming Dr. Montse Fuentes as our new president starting July 1st. And I think Montse is with us tonight as well. So next prayer, please. Excuse me, next slide, there we go. And we're going to open in prayer as we do all things. And I thought it was only appropriate that we share this particular prayer with you tonight. This comes to us from Linda Ruskowski, who is the Director of Campus Ministry at Academy of the Holy Cross in Kensington, Maryland. And so this prayer is just one part of a prayer book that the Holy Cross Institute has been compiling this year. We invited students and faculty members from Holy Cross schools in the US to submit prayers that would go into this prayer book. And of course, how meaningful it has been that these prayers came to us in this past year, a year that has been fraught with certainly a pandemic. As Pope Francis has referred to, that really the confluence of pandemics. We've had a health pandemic in COVID-19, certainly the racial injustices that have, and the sin of racism that has reared its ugly head in the last year, and then of course the socioeconomic inequalities that certainly have risen to the surface. So this prayer book really are messages of hope, and so this particular prayer comes to us from Linda. We look forward to publishing the prayer book for you later this spring. And so if you would, please, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, amen. Good and gracious God, we praise and thank you for all the many blessings you have given us. May we always look to you as the source of our hope, as we, the Holy Cross family, faithfully proclaim, Ave Crux Bezunica, hail the cross, our only hope. May we never lose focus that the suffering of the cross always leads to resurrection. Through times of darkness, may we see the light. And may our hope in you, Lord, lead to peace and joy. And may our lives bring this hope to the world around us. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, amen. Linda, thank you for that beautiful prayer. Just really quick about the Holy Cross Institute. Those of you that are not familiar with what it is that we do, we are located at St. Edward's University, and a partnership between the Congregation of Holy Cross, specifically the founding charter sponsors of the Holy Cross Institute include the Moreau Province of Brothers and the Midwest Province of Brothers. So through the collective efforts and energies of those two provinces and St. Edward's University, the Holy Cross Institute was born. That was in 2004. And what we do, have done, and continue to do, and seek to do even more in the future, is to really be a resource center or a hub or a mechanism for academic research, resources, leadership development and formation, and support for our school leaders and educators in Holy Cross. And so it's about providing information and formation ultimately for the transformation of the world. We also just want to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this event. All of the activities that the Holy Cross Institute offers are offered free of charge to all attendees, including signature events like the convocation that you'll hear a little bit more about later on today. But we want to thank this particular sponsor. The Y River Group has been our annual sponsor for all of the activities this year of the Holy Cross Institute, a terrific organization that supports nonprofits, has supported many of our schools in the United States in debt restructuring, debt refinancing, tax-exempt bond issuance, and then also doing financial analysis for schools and financial planning for schools. So we really want to thank our friends from the Y River Group. And as well, we invite you, again, we can only bring you these programs due to the generosity of others. And so if you know of businesses or other leaders in the community, or even you individually that might want to sponsor an activity or a program, there are plenty of sponsorship opportunities, whether it's a small gift or donation of $10 or larger gifts and contributions to support our activities, all are welcome. So we thank you for that. And then as we get into the instructions for today, so this is a Zoom webinar feature that we're in today. So you can see Sister Diane and you can see me and you can see what's on the screen, but we can't see you. If you have questions, we invite you to drop those questions into the chat. And we've got some folks that are monitoring the chat box, and we'll make sure that we get all those questions, hopefully will get answered. If you run into any technical difficulties, there is a feature that you can either raise your hand or you can put it in chat. And if all of that fails, then we ask you to send an email to the Holy Cross Institute website, which is hci@stedwards.edu, hci@stedwards.edu. And then the last two things to remember, this is being recorded. And we'll have the recording available and sent out to you tomorrow. And last but not least, enjoy, because I know you're really in for a great treat tonight. Just talk for a moment. What you see on your screen here is the original seal of the Congregation of Holy Cross. And those of you that are more familiar with Holy Cross, or you've been on other webinars, you've seen this displayed before. And you know, it's a beautiful image of what the original intention was that Father Moreau had in creating the Congregation of Holy Cross, meant to represent the Holy Family. So when you see the initials JMJ for Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and as well, you can see there that you have the Sacred Heart of Jesus, you have the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and you have the Heart of Joseph. And so I think, again, if you know the history, the congregation in its desired form by Father Moreau did not receive papal approval. And maybe we'll hear a little bit about that from Sister Diane tonight. But ultimately, I think the idea from the pontiff was a community of men and women together was not something approved at that time. And so, that really, in many ways, became a blessing in disguise, because from that were the three branches of the sisters. And we're going to hear tonight, of course, about the Sisters of the Holy Cross. And so we do expect in future meetings of this sort, webinars of this sort, that hopefully you'll learn more about the Sisters of Holy Cross. And back in January, you learned a little bit more about the Marianite Sisters of Holy Cross. And so we welcome tonight, next slide, please. Our featured speaker, Sister Diane Cundiff, is coming to us from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And she's going to tell you about the few years that she's been there and some of the programs she's been involved with. And really just delighted, Sister. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. We know it's a little bit later in the night there than it is here, but we're really very grateful that you're sharing your time and your gifts and your passion tonight with us. So we're going to turn this program over to you.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be doing all this in March, because it's the Feast of St. Joseph that was just this past week. And he's the patron of all of the brothers especially, but also of the church. And I would say good death, if there can be such a thing as good death. And today we celebrated arriving at 201,000 deaths in Brazil. And we're number one in daily deaths in the whole world. And we account for almost, well, like 20, no, we're a big percentage of the deaths in the world right now with the 200,000. So there's a lot of suffering and tragedy, but St. Joseph was used to all of that. And also, less than a week ago, I celebrated my birthday, because I'm 76 trombones of years. And I've been making lots of videos this year for the parents and teachers and different people. And so I asked for my birthday for people to send me donations to buy mostly food, but also tents and other things that people who are living in the streets, or indigenous people, or immigrants from different countries who don't have food and don't have medical supplies, although right now in Sao Paulo we don't either. One of our former sisters lost her brother yesterday, 50 years old, father of 3, because there was no oxygen in Lima for him to be aided. So I've been getting a lot of donations so that people can be helped, which is nice to give people opportunities to be in communion with one another. A lot of people are helping, but sometimes I feel that the help that most people need, which is the social distancing and wearing masks and not having parties, is very hard for Brazilians to give up. So as I say, the deaths, we're having more than 3,000 a day, and to say that every day we're losing 30% more, it's like having 9/11 every day, except with 30% more deaths. And it just goes on and on and on. And a lot of it is a result, well, almost all of it is a result of political decisions that were taken not to buy enough vaccines, not to buy and not to produce ventilators. And so there is a lot of suffering, a lot of unemployment, and a lot of people living on the streets. So our environment is reaching us in a hard way, and specifically in the school. We haven't been, we had about a month and almost a month and a half of school this year, after a whole year of no school. And then, but now we're on lockdown again. And even though the government said we'd go back after Easter, the likelihood of our going back after Easter are pretty slim. So we're thinking maybe only in May will we get back. One of the things that Marco asked me to do was talk a little bit about the history and where the Sisters of the Holy Cross came from. Obviously, we were founded as Maronites with the group of women that Moreau wanted to help the priests and brothers with laundry and taking care of orphans and also cooking food. But he also expected them, besides walking very far from Bertrand, Michigan to Notre Dame every day, to also teach in a primary school. So the sisters were always involved in education from the earliest years. And they went to Indiana in 1844 with a group of priests and brothers. That was very typical of what Moreau did when he sent out groups. He usually sent out priests, brothers, and sisters so that the mission would be a balanced group. When our sisters got to Indiana, and basically we got to Indiana because the idea was to give catechism and set up schools for the Potawatomi Indians in Indiana. There was a group that stayed in New York. There was a group that stayed in Canada, and our group came with the others to Indiana. And over the years, and not so many years, because of the difficulty of the culture, almost all of the French sisters went back to France in a very short time. And there were a lot of vocations from Americans. And so there was a cultural problem between the Americans and those in France, but also with those in Canada, and also among themselves. Were they daughters of Sorin? Were they daughters of Moreau? Were they Americans? Were they French? Were they in a French congregation? So this question about an international community and congregation was early. So there were adaptations. The sisters in the United States made more adaptations of the schedule and the clothes that they were wearing than the ones in Canada. And that also created problems. As I say, Americans, they don't do real well with following very set rules, whereas French people do it better. At that time they did anyway. And also there were problems of permissions. If Soren was going to give permission, if Moreau was supposed to give permission, Soren could give it in one day. With Father Moreau, it might take 6 months to a year. So there was a lot of stress and strain. And so the Sisters of the Holy Cross separated from the Maronites, and actually their constitution was approved before the constitutions of the Maronites and other Sisters of Holy Cross, and actually one of the first constitutions approved was that of the Sisters of the Holy Cross. And the sisters, as I say, started working as they grew more and more. They started expanding throughout the United States into the parish school system. And also they founded some private schools. For instance, the Academy of Holy Cross in Kensington is one where I studied in South Bend, which was St. Mary's Academy, which was one of the first ones ever founded, even before St. Mary's College. That was also, there were academies. And then there were also schools, high schools and grade schools, a lot of schools, and a number of universities. There was Dunbarton University, there was Boston University, there was, besides St. Mary's, there were other universities that closed until now. There's just St. Mary's. Today we have schools in Ghana, in Uganda, in India, Bangladesh, and here in Brazil, outside of the United States. From the earliest days in a lot of these countries, to get yourself established, and you say, what is the greatest need? In almost all developing countries, whether it's the United States or Brazil or other parts of the world, the greatest need of culture is education. It's of interest to citizenship, it's interest to industry, it's interesting for politicians. Everybody wants education. Families want education. They feel like their culture moves forward through education, that people can become more themselves and contribute more to the world, the better education they have. And that hasn't changed in our congregation. As far as how did we get from Indiana to Brazil? You know, when I say people, Americans are flexible, sometimes it amazes me how flexible people used to be in relation to my experience when I was in the congregation. Our superior went to a luncheon at Cardinal Hera, who's a Holy Cross Cardinal. The Cardinal from Sao Paulo was invited to lunch, and our Superior General was invited to lunch during a Eucharistic Congress. And at lunch, the Cardinal from, the Bishop from Sao Paulo said to our Superior General, oh, gee, why don't you send some of our sisters, some of your sisters down to Brazil? We'd love to have you. And they had that meal probably in July or August. And in October of that same year, we were down here. Nobody makes a decision that fast anymore. You have to discern, and lots of things have to happen. And then you have to get your first group. Well, our first group was a very interesting first group of 4 sisters. 2 of them had just spent 3.5 years in a Japanese concentration camp during the war in the Philippines, because they were nurses and they were on their way to India to serve as nurses, and the ship was stopped and kept in the Philippines, and these sisters were in a concentration camp where they had maggot soup usually for lunch or supper or breakfast. So when the war ended in 45, they needed to restore their health. And you think, we came down in 47, 2 years after the war, These sisters were down here. Another one, Sister Charlita, had been 17 years in an orphanage in Bengal. And she was very, very ill. And they said if she stays even a few more months, she'll die. So she was sent back to the States to recover her health. And so the Superior General said, oh, look, I've got these 3 nuns in terrible health. Let's send them down because now they're recovered. And of course, since they were coming to a country where people only speak Portuguese, they chose somebody from Mexico who speaks only Spanish to come and accompany them, because there's obviously almost no difference between one Romance language and another. Although that sister stayed a very short time. And so I just finished retyping, or having retyped, the first 11 years of our sisters down here in Brazil. And it's just one unbelievable story after the other of how those sisters created Holy Cross here in Brazil, and how the school was founded and how it grew, and the collaboration of the priests at that time, the sisters at that time, everybody, including where we're living now and where the school was founded, was the bishop's summer residence. And it was a Holy Cross priest, Corbet, who indicated to our sisters, why don't you ask the cardinal if you can live in the summer home and set up your school in the summer home? And because he had been killed in a plane crash, and so the house was available. And people said, you know, nobody's going to go to your school because people leave the interior to study in the city. And nobody's going to leave the city to go study in the interior. Because at that time, we were on the outskirts of the city. Now we're not in the outskirts, but not because we moved. It's the city that moved. And today we have 2,500 students in the day school and in the night school. We have preschool through secondary level for regular age students. And then we also have night school from literacy through secondary level of working class. And that's 100% free for those 500 students. And then we also have an educational center for educators and elderly. And among the elderly, we have somebody who's 94 years old who comes to now they're all on in webinars, and they're all on the internet. But the kindergarten, when the sisters came, obviously they needed to make a living. So they organized a school, a finishing school for girls. And they had horseback riding, and they had cooking, and they had Latin, Greek, obviously Portuguese, French, English. It was an interesting course. But anyway, a school was also set up for the neighboring kids whose parents, a lot of them, they made bricks out of mud to build houses. These houses are all over the place from the bricks that were made in our neighborhood. And also there was a kindergarten started in 1949. As I say, we arrived in November of 1947. By March, the school opened, the finishing school opened. And then the following year, they started the kindergarten. Then every year they added another class. In the original kindergarten, all of the sisters who came down, they were all put into start in the kindergarten because kindergarten was all in English, which was a real calling point for people. We have 650 employees. So it's a big school, but it's a big grounds. It's a big campus. There's 4 pieces of land that are attached except for the roads. And there's a woods on one side, and there's a big woods on the other side. So it's very, very green. In terms of Holy Cross, I would say the sisters have always dreamed big, not in the sense of having something like having lots of people, but it's always to move forward in terms of what are the greatest needs of the people, how can we best serve, and there's never an obstacle that can't be overcome. You get the right people, you get the right dream, you get the right plan, you get the right ideas, the right support, and anything is possible. Might take longer, might take a short time, but basically always moving forward, always moving forward. So from the school, at one point at the end of the 1970s, the sisters we were in 2 parishes, actually 3 parishes, other than the school. And we made a decision that to the degree possible, we would move the sisters out of the school into other areas, more abandoned areas of the country of Brazil, so that greater needs could be reached. And I would honestly say, when we left those 2 of those parishes, we really never did very well in any other parish. We were kicked out of several parishes. Probably we have 3 or 4 parishes where we worked in different parts of Brazil, and generally there were conflicts with the priests, and then the bishop or even the cardinal asked us to leave and go somewhere else because support needs to be given above all to the priests. And the sisters can always find something else. So today, we really don't have sisters in Brazil who are in parishes. People are doing different things. We have someone who's a lawyer. She works with indigenous populations. She works with foreign female prisoners, a lot of them who have children and children's rights when they have these kids and what happens to their kids when they go to prison. A lot of the people who are imprisoned are mules from the drug trade from their countries, and they're denounced when they have a little bit of drugs. They're put in jail and the big drugs come on through. Lots and lots of drugs come through, but we have a lot of foreign prisoners, and when they go out, they have no place to live, no way to support themselves or their families. So we have a sister working in that. There's a number of people who are make a living from what we would call prostitution, but it's negotiating what they have. They're poor, they sell their bodies. And so there are groups and our sisters work with them so they're called marginalized women. We have people who work with people who live on the streets, whether it's because of crack or because it's just poverty or alcohol or brain problems, emotional problems that the family doesn't want them anymore. And we have people working in education, giving English classes, or I would say it would be hard to say. We have one who does spiritual direction and gives retreats and works with religious. Another one is a pedagogical specialist. There are words for all these things in Portuguese, but I'm not sure in English what you call it, people. But number of people are doing, I would say, direct work with the poor or working with organizations who work with movements. At different times, we've had people working ministry to laborers, ministry of landless people. We have people working with getting titles to land that they have a right to according to government, but it might take 20 or 30 years or never to get titles. So there are people working with immigrants, as I say, a lot of people with nonviolence or human traffic or different kinds of traffic and family violence and nonviolence. There's a lot going on. Peru has fewer sisters, but they're basically doing a lot of the same kinds of things, giving Bible courses and courses in nonviolence and accompanying women's groups and prisoners, women prisoners and women in prisons for women. I would say in terms of education, one of the biggest challenges we've had throughout the years, and with COVID even more, which is to redesign a curriculum based on project learning, which is done in the States, it's done all over the world, but how to incorporate the questions of social justice and injustice within projects. We've always had, from practically the foundation of the school, groups of older students who went to do ministry in different parts of the country or even parts of the city, or we have groups who were going to public residential homes for people who are gathered off the streets, or orphanages, or people who were, I would say, doing remedial work with kids, or doing recreational activity with kids, or giving courses for children and adults on how to do low-cost solar panels, how to make solar panels, and so that they went into some slums and installed them in homes that were chosen according to where they were, so that they would have the sun, and also train the youth of that community to maintain them and keep them functioning. But there were people who worked in projects for cisterns. How do you have a water cistern in your own home, and also to do campaigns to get money in the Northeast where there wasn't water, there'd just be water part of the year, how you can get the water, collect the water from all the roofs and have water all year round in the cisterns. So it would be hard to say how many different projects there are, because things start in the kindergarten with our kids going to like orphanages and then bringing the orphans to the school to have art activities or share their snacks, all the way up to the high school level, where they travel outside of the state of Sao Paulo and work in other areas in other states that are particularly poor. And with COVID, we haven't been able to do that. So one of the projects that the students are doing is to say, how does the congregation have projects of social investment? What is the process by which people ask groups, not individual peoples, but how do groups of poor people, whether it's rural groups or urban groups, what kind of money do they need to run their programs, or what kind of assistance do they need in terms of planning or in terms of legal structuring, so that we can give the aid. And then our students are learning about what are the projects that are chosen, why are those projects chosen to get financial or consulting aid to move forward. And so even though they can't go out into any place, they still, it's part of the education of Holy Cross to always have the school in the midst of social reality, which was described in the prayer we had at the beginning. If y'all were paying attention to Marco, you know what the prayer was all about. So I would say one is what we do as students, and the other is to redesign how we do, how we're going to transfer the administration of this school from religious right now. And I would say for many years, there have been very few sisters in the school, and how to transfer, not just hire somebody to do my job, but to eliminate my job and have not a hierarchical structure, but a communitarian model of people assuming corporate responsibility for the activity and calling one another to responsibility. And so it's a whole practice of how you operate on the day by day, and what are the very few things I do anymore, and what do other people do right this minute. But then for the last 40 years, 35 years maybe, I've been head principal of Colegio Santa Maria. I had a partner until a year and a half ago, and then she died of cancer, but she still is in the school. And also I'm right now president of our juridic person of the congregation here in Brazil. And so it's really a fascinating job that I have right now, because there's nothing I don't know. Everybody brings me all kinds of information, and whatever they bring me, it ties into something else. So I'm able to help a lot more people, because if somebody brings me a problem, I know who the 30 people are they can go to for help. We had the person in charge of our accounting. She did the annual balance sheet for the audit. And so I got it. I went through and read the whole thing and had questions with some of the numbers or some of the information. So I asked the person who's in charge of finances, but he's an accountant. I said, I want you to explain this to me. He said, well, you're right, this really is wrong. And I said, this is missing and this needs to be said differently. And so I said, now I want you to call up the person in charge of accounting and tell her you are her best partner, because you are highly trained and you've been in charge of accounting for the last 20 years. So she needs to use you as a resource and not try and go it herself, because she's in charge. And the idea is everybody's in charge and nobody's in charge. Everybody has to find partnership. And then there's more support, and people are really loving moving forward and growing and educating each other. There's a whole different climate. Even though we're in the middle of COVID, people are finding new life in education. Anyway, I've talked a whole long time. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask me.
Yeah, thanks, sister. There are a couple of questions that are rolling in. And so first off, let me just recap a couple of things for a moment. I'm looking at this twinkle in your eye and this remarkable energy that you possess. And I think if I heard you correctly, you've been the lead principal for 35 years. And you've been at the school since 1973, is that right?
Yep.
1973. Wow. So you're nearing 50 years in Sao Paulo at Colegio Santa Maria. Just remarkable. And sadly, as a former school principal myself, I only lasted 13 years as a principal and 10 years as a president. So I really tip my hat to you and your leadership. And
let me just tell you, I have never had 2 years in a row. I haven't had 45 years of experience. I've had 45 different experiences. I've worked with some people for 30 years and some people for 3 months. There's just constantly, everything is changing. The whole world's changing. Education's changing. I do courses in the States. I participate, I read, but so does everybody else. So there's a real vitality of saying it's always new. I was going to stay in Brazil just 5 years because I thought I'll be, things are going to get routine, and I don't want to stay there once things get routine, and I keep waiting for the routine. I don't know I know tomorrow what it's going to be because I have a meeting all day long. But today, when I came down here, I didn't have anything scheduled at all. And I had one meeting after the other, people just stopping by and saying, I have this student who's doing hacking and he's denigrating the image of one of the teachers and he's sending this information. We know who it is, but his parents deny that it's a problem. They just think it's a prank, but it's against the law what he's doing. So the person said, so now what would be a good way? We're thinking of writing a letter and we're thinking of doing this. She sent me the letter. I said, listen, we said we were going to put in a letter that we're sending this information to a lawyer to open a legal process to get Google to identify the person so we can go after him. And so that's not anything I planned, but it's another challenge. Everything is another challenge.
Well, that vitality, you're such a really wonderful example to all of us on maintaining that vitality and beginning again each day, right? And continuing to learn and grow that passion for lifelong learning. And by the way, I'm also glad to hear that it's not just us who have students that are denigrating images of student or faculty members. And
Faculty.
yeah, and so no, I appreciate that. Part of what, and this is no small enterprise either. I mean, your school, you said, is 2,500 students. We're talking K3 all the way to, you said you had a 94-year-old and the adult literacy program. I mean, just really remarkable response to what you said earlier. You said a response to the needs of society, right? And I'm struck by your mission statement on the Sisters of the Holy Cross website, and I'll read it out loud for everyone, but it says, "We, Sisters of the Holy Cross throughout the world, are called to participate in the prophetic mission of Jesus to witness God's love for all creation. Compassion moves us to reflect on the signs of the times, discern needs, and respond. We stand in solidarity with the poor and the powerless. Our life together enriches and strengthens us to foster community wherever we are." And I read that statement. I looked at St. Mary's College. I looked at Academy of the Holy Cross, and both of their mission statements are reflected very similarly. But I see this reflection on the sign. You reflect on the signs of the times. You discern the needs, and you respond. And I think what I'm so struck by with the sisters is that you've got this driven by compassion and love, and to be purveyors of justice. I'm so impressed on your website that you have corporate stands on migration, corporate stands on racism and other areas. And we really just applaud those efforts. And, I just wonder, maybe you can talk a little bit about what some of the other ministries, some of the other things that are happening around the world, but also reflect a little bit on discerning that need to take these stands and to be as proactive as the sisters are in leading the way as purveyors of justice.
Well, probably I could start with Asia because they're our oldest ministry. We were in Bengal for a long time. Then the sisters left and they went back there. So we've had a long history in Bengal. We originally went there in 1852, which you can imagine was in the early days, and then went back in 1927. And again, 4 sisters started that ministry too. And today there are 104 sisters plus 21 in formation.
Wow.
Between India and Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, we have 14 local communities. In India, where we went in 1998, because some of the sisters wanted to study in India. And so the way to have a house of formation and have the possibility of, because there were problems getting back and forth between India and Bangladesh. So we opened a mission in India. But there are 6 local communities in India today. They have 9 sponsored ministries between schools, hostels. They also have a sewing center. But these hostels are something that have to do with discerning needs, because these young women don't have a place to stay in Dhaka or where they're going to study. And so they need a hostel to be able to live in a safe place as women. They also work in 17 archdioceses or with Holy Cross. So they're really tied into ministry in the church, ministry with other religious congregations, and also in our own ministries. In Africa, we have 33 sisters. We have 19 in Uganda and 14 in Ghana. And actually, when I was interested in going to the foreign missions, I volunteered for Uganda. I'd heard it was the Switzerland of Africa. I hate the heat. So I thought, I'll go to the Switzerland of Africa. I didn't get there. And there's also 14 in formation, but they work in education and in nursing They have a center for midwives to train midwives for others in our own institutions. In North America, as you can imagine, we have 190 sisters, and of these 190, 175 are between 70 and 109 years old. So even with that, we have 3 sponsored ministries of sisters in the United States, also in Mexico. There's the academy that you mentioned in St. Mary's College, but we also have sisters, including one that's here today, from Utah Ministries in Salt Lake. I saw her when you said who's here. I thought, oh, Marian Pachkowski's here.
And she is, and there's others from Peru as well, and other parts of the world. It's really remarkable. So, you know, and I'm sorry, you had a last thing there, and then I've got a couple of questions that have rolled in.
Okay, ask some more questions.
Yeah, so here we go. So, you know, Sal Chavez, by the way, just wanted to comment on the project-based learning approach. Really fantastic, he says, especially because it's focused on social justice and just how fitting for you and your mission. And, you know, when you talk about evaluating what are the needs of society, discerning those needs, and then responding, you're teaching your students at a young age to do that. And, you know, maybe many of us can take a slice out of that chapter out of that book and learn from you in our own service ministries that we have in our schools and our own campus ministries that we have in our schools. So kudos there. Dan Curtin, who is a name I'm sure you're very familiar with. Dan was chair of the board for the Holy Cross Institute and has served at Bishop McNamara, was the first lay principal at Mackin Catholic High School in DC, a Holy Cross Brother School. So long association with Holy Cross. But Dan asks, first he says, thank you for all that you do for Holy Cross and that you continue to do each day. And he asks, do you receive any public funding for your work?
That's a real easy question to answer. No, never, nobody.
And so you do all of this. You find ways, just like you said earlier, you know, you just kind of figure it out. You go with the dream, a vision, put together a plan, and you put the energy together behind it, and you get it done.
Well, the school from the beginning had to be able to maintain the sisters and its own education. Private schools don't really get anything from the government. So schools have to survive on tuition.
Wow.
And so whatever we give out in donations, we gave, I'm saying, several million out in discounts last year because of COVID and the unemployment. And so there was a deficit, but we have savings accounts to cover emergency situations. So yes, we're able to financially be able to support any of our ministries in Brazil. In Peru, because of the laws in Brazil, you can't send any money that's produced here in Brazil, you can't send it outside the country. But for instance, our sisters in Peru, their work has to be funded all from the states because the people that they work with really don't have resources. They're offering their services free of charge because there's the need, but not the financial ability to pay for services that they get. So that is covered from the United States. But in the other countries, really financing is always a problem to try and have their schools begin to support themselves and eventually provide finances to cover all the needs of the sisters, the congregation, and their ministries.
Yeah. So again, just a remarkable part of the story there that you have to find ways for this to happen, right? And finances, where there's no money, there's no mission. So clearly you find ways to support through tuition, fundraising, et cetera. Maybe we'll have a chance before we end, even how schools we can partner, right, and support the work that you do there in some way. I know I always get asked questions about doing exchanges and mission trips and the like. I'm sure that we would have schools very interested in bringing student groups for visits in the future, of course, when we get into a post-COVID era. But another question is rolled in here. We got a couple of minutes left for it. But Sister, are there difficulties because of racial diversity in the school?
let me just tell you, there are fewer whites than brown shades. There are very few. In Brazil, almost everybody, they say, has a little bit of milk in the chocolate, in the coffee. There's always a few drops of milk in the coffee of all of Brazil. Yes, there's a lot. I wouldn't say in the school there's racial tension, but there is always a problem of what we call bullying. You all probably call it bullying too.
Mhm.
There are always kids who want to promote themselves at the expense of somebody else, whether it's, I would say, having more or less resources is a bigger problem than color. But color, very definitely, the darker you are, the chances are you're poor. And we have students who have full scholarships. If somebody is dark, nobody here likes to say black. Nobody wants to consider that they're black. But if people are darker, the tendency is to believe that they have scholarships, whereas the white ones probably don't have, but that's not really true. Although more of our, for instance, the night school, there are very few white people at night because the class that had to stop studying when they were young, either because they were from cities where there was no education past 3rd or 4th grade, or they had to go to work, or they got married, or they had to move to a different place. The Portuguese word for dark is escuro. But I would say that those people who had the hardest time, they were farmers, they had to leave their farms or work just in civil construction. They couldn't study. And so, yes, they're mostly black. And I would say definitely there is prejudice and a lot of it in Brazil. But there's a lot of opportunities if you're white and if you're educated, just like anywhere else in the world. And if you are black, you have to have terrific personality and strong will and strong self-image. So that's what we work on, is working on all the kids having strong self-images and collaborating and working in teams so that they can see how everyone brings a different talent. And the more talents you have in a group, the better. Not the more colors, but the more talents you have in the group, the better.
Just as we say, the pillars of Holy Cross education include being family, right? You're teaching them to be family, live in community, build in respect, right? And that's respect.
All those things that have to do with Holy Cross, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Including
Educating hearts
zeal.
and minds, yeah, that's right, yeah. Just, Sister, I'm asked the question in my new role, really what gets me motivated each day, what gets me excited about my work and my ministry that I do each day. And frankly, it's examples such as yours. You're a hero in my eyes, I'm sure, to the thousands of students over the years that have gone to your school. And then we look back over the hundreds of years, the 200-year legacy, certainly of the Brothers of St. Joseph, and the nearly 200 years since the Sisters of the Holy Cross. And so what gets me up every day is honoring your legacy. And I hope that tonight was just one step in honoring that legacy and thanking and celebrating that legacy. And the opportunity that we have in Holy Cross is that we get a chance to be the change that we want to see in the world, right? And that's what you do every day. You're being the change that you want to see in the world. You're figuring out what is the need. You're addressing that need. And what a great lesson for all of us. And
I just want you to realize, behind me, I have 650 people. I have years of tradition. I have all kinds of sisters. There's so many people that are me. You can't imagine what a big group is here that I'm using my mouth to tell you. Because I can't tell you, I am not a hero, but I work with people who really are bearers of hope. They really believe that it's possible in our lifetime or in the next one to bring justice and bring life conditions for the poor to survive.
And that's what has to continue to drive us, is that hope. Really, really remarkable tonight, sister. And we're coming to the end of our session. I have a couple of quick last announcements I'd like to make. And Denise, if you could share the slides again. There we go. So, people ask again, where can we get some additional information if we want to dive deeper into our own study and spirituality and to learn more about Holy Cross? And so these are all the various websites for the Moreau Province and Midwest Provinces of Brothers, the Congregation of Holy Cross, the Maronite Sisters, the Holy Cross History Association, of course, St. Edward's University Alumni Association, Holy Cross Vocations, if you're interested in exploring more about the brothers and priests vocations, and then of course through the Sisters of the Holy Cross to learn more about the ministries and vocations there as well. We're going to be sending this slideshow to you tomorrow as part of the recording too. And then we remind you that there are a series of events that the Holy Cross Institute sponsors. We have several that are upcoming. April 3rd, all of you are invited to participate in an event that's co-sponsored with Pax Christi of Texas, which will be a focus on environmental ethics. So we've sent out some information. We will send out more information to register for that. And then April the 8th, our colleagues at St. Edward's University have invited us to participate in the McCarthy Lecture series, which for this spring will feature Bishop Shelton Fabre, who is one of the primary authors of the Open Wide Our Hearts pastoral letter written in 2018. By USCCB. And so you're invited to participate in that, 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time, April 8th. And then of course the convocation that's coming up April 15th through the 18th. And so we've already had more than 300 people register for that, and we expect upwards of 500 will be there. All of these events are free, and we hope that people will take advantage of these. And then we've got more coming this summer with some of the programs that you can see listed there. Next slide. And I always love to wrap up with this quote, which is another source of inspiration for me. And it says very simply that Father Moreau reminds us that education is a work of resurrection. And in this Lenten season, as we approach Easter, we know about going from darkness to light. We know about going from death to resurrection. And as a source, it's meant to be a liberation from the darkness of ignorance. It's meant to be a vehicle for the transformation of society, and it's meant to be a process that helps to make all things, especially the persons engaged in it, new. And so what we're called to be is disciples with hope to bring, and you said it right there at the end, sister. We thank you for that. I thank you for your time. We're going to ask everybody to hang on for about 1.5 minutes longer because we have a quick little video we want to share with you. Denise is going to cue that up, but while she does, again, I want to thank this team. I want to thank all of you. Over 100 from around the world who participated. Your beautiful comments. If we didn't answer a question, I promise to get back to you. You can always stay in touch with us at the Holy Cross Institute and reach out for any needs. And sister, you can count on me. When I'm fully vaccinated, but as this world begins to get safer and safer, I promise you, I'm going to make a trip down to your school to be able to see you and visit with your students. All right, thank you. And we're going to cue up this video. Thank you all for being on. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the beautiful campus of St. Edward's University here in Austin, Texas, home of the Holy Cross Institute. From April 15th through the 18th, the Holy Cross Institute Convocation, that annual gathering of Holy Cross educators from around the world, will be coming to you. This completely virtual event will be coming to you April 15th through the 18th. We'll feature 3 keynote presentations, over 50 workshops and breakout sessions, opportunities to gather in affinity groups, to do networking, to pray together, to celebrate Mass, and to celebrate the 200-year legacy of the Brothers of St. Joseph, now the Brothers of Holy Cross. And best of all, it'll be coming to you absolutely free.
Every human being was put here for service.
We have featured internationally acclaimed book author Jason Reynolds, a graduate from a Holy Cross school, who will talk more with us about racism, anti-racism, and our role as forces for good in society. 200 years ago, the brothers forged forward on faith and trusting in divine providence that they could make a difference in the world. We hope you can join us April 15th through the 18th, and you can register by clicking on this link. And until we see each other again, let's remain disciples with hope to bring. Ave Crux Bezunica. Thank you so much. And with that, we will sign off tonight. Sister, again, thank you. You and your community are in our prayers. We pray for your return, for the collective return to good health for Brazil, for your school community, for the world. And may God bless you, sister. Thank you so much for being here
Thank you
tonight.
for inviting me.
All right.
Okay.
So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.